We have some new poll numbers on gun reform to share with you. First, let's go to some numbers from CNN. 70% support stricter gun control. It was just 52% in October, so that's a giant tick up in the numbers there. 27% oppose stricter gun control. Let's take a look at the USA Today poll. 76% want to ban people with mental illnesses from purchasing guns. 63% want semi-automatic weapons banned. And then I saved the doozy for the final one here, Cenk. Look at the Quinnipiac poll. 97% of people support universal background checks. So that includes, obviously, you know, overwhelming majority of Democrats, but an overwhelming majority of independents, overwhelming majority of Republicans, overwhelming majority of gun owners, which actually gets to a point that you make all the time, which is the real problem. It's not even the NRA. The real problem is the leadership of the NRA, because the leadership of the NRA is bought by the gun makers. So if you speak to, you know, regular run-of-the-mill gun owner, they're going to tell you, yeah, I don't want anybody getting a gun without a background check, because then they think that that affects their right to own a gun. So we're all on the same page here, but there's this mucked up fake debate. That's what it looks like to me, because the people who make the guns want there to be a fake debate, and they have money and power.
So a couple of points off that. When asked in another part of the poll, how many of you do you think have excellent or just good faith that Congress is going to take action on this? Only 19% said yes, that they have any faith. Now, 97% believe we should have universal background checks, but only 19% think we're going to get them. Do you think we live in a democracy? Because apparently the American people don't think we live in a democracy. If 97% of the people believe something in a democracy, well, it would certainly become law. But not in our country, because now the NRA, and before it wasn't as bought by the gun manufacturers. When it first started, it really was for the members. It was for people who were actually went hunting, used rifles, etc. Now they get more money from weapons manufacturers. It's all about the money, Lebowski. So they take some portion of that and they give it to the politicians. $30 million to Donald Trump, $3 million to Marco Rubio. By the way, over $7 million to John McCain. And the list goes on of millions of dollars the NRA has funneled for the weapons manufacturers to the politicians. So 97% of you agree? Who cares? What do you think? This is a democracy? And by the way, why is it that gun owners want that universal background check? Well, if you're a law-abiding citizen and you go to your local shop to buy a gun, you got to go through a background check. But you just go to a gun show and there are no rules there, and anybody can buy a gun.
Yep.
Well, number one, that's not fair.
Yep.
Right. Number two, anyone can see that totally gets rid of the rule where you have to buy it legally. Number three, you can see how the bad guy would immediately go to a gun show to buy the guns, and it's against the rule of law. And Kyle made a really important point there. If you abuse the Second Amendment this much and say there are no rules at all to the Second Amendment, it's not constrained by anything. I could get an RPG and fire, missiles at you, and I can get a tank, and I can get a nuke, and I can get it illegally well, not illegally, now it's legal, at a gun show without any background checks. Guess what they're gonna do? Finally, at some point, people are gonna go, maybe the Second Amendment sucks. Maybe we should take it away. And people who like the Second Amendment go, wait, no, why aren't we doing background checks on people? Then the bad guys will get guns.
Yeah, and there's another really important point here too, which is, hey, Democrats, run on this issue. They're not running on this issue. And you know what's really fascinating about this? On many issues, the Democrats and the Republicans have similar donors. So you kind of see why it is that the Democrats are weak on, like, Wall Street, for example, and why they often do center-right policies and they're Republican light. But on the issue of guns, this is a rare issue where they're actually not bought off by the NRA. The overwhelming majority of Democrats do not take any money from the NRA or gun makers. So this shows you the fundamental weakness of the Democrats, because even when they're not bought off, they're still doing the wrong policy. They're still not fighting for it. And I covered a story on my show a few weeks ago about how even in red districts, this issue is popular. If you run on universal background checks, for example, even if you go as far as a ban on high-capacity magazines, even in red districts, people are like, yeah, we want this because you know what? Regular people have kids and they see how often these kids are getting massacred at schools. But the Democrats are failing to fight back, and it shows you that they're weak and they have no clue how to win elections. They're utterly clueless.
Well, that's the unfortunate byproduct of a system that systematically selects weak Democrats. Now, they select weak Democrats so that they'll lay down to Wall Street. So they'll lay down to the pharmaceutical companies and the oil companies and the defense companies. But once you've selected a person whose job is to lay down, when he gets to the gun manufacturers, he's like, I don't know, I've been trained to lay down, so I'm gonna lay down. Now, this is not theoretical. We covered a story last week where Senate Democrats talked to reporters on the Hill and said, we're not gonna run on this issue because it might hurt Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp's chances in their races. And they said, well, then the other side will say that we're trying to take away everyone's guns. Well, you could counter that by talking and making your own points. But they're so used to surrendering, and they've been pre-selected to surrender, that even on an issue where they're not bought, they surrender because that's in their nature. Yeah. So, I mean, for God's sake, we know for a fact that is not in dispute. The Democrats have said individual Democrats can run in their own districts or states on this issue, but there will be no national messaging from the Democratic Party on this issue. They will not fight on this issue. If you don't fight on an issue where you have 97% of the American people behind you, what will you fight on? And the answer is absolutely nothing.
Well, what they're going to do is break down the barriers, and they're going to be stronger together, and they're going to use some more platitudes and cliches.
Yeah,
that's the message.
Yeah, if they actually fought on this, they could win not only policy fights in a new Congress, but you could win politically. It would actually help you to get more victories. I don't know if you know this, but when 97% of the people are on your side, that's usually a winning electoral strategy. And by the way, we keep using the 97% number, and that's a layup. But put that aside, because that's a specific issue of universal background checks and the gun show loophole, et cetera. But 2/3 of Americans, 66%, say they want tighter gun control across the board. 2/3 across the board. You got 2/3 of the American people on your side. You don't fight, then retire. Go, step aside, let Justice Democrats come in, let progressives come in, let uncorrupted progressives come in. Just surrender already. Of course, the only time they ever actually do fight is in primaries when there's
against the progressives.
Against the progressives who are uncorrupt. You just watched a video by the Young Turks, the home of the revolution. If you'd like to get the full show, come join us and become a member. tytnetwork.com/join.